There was a tiny village surrounded by mountains and hills. The village was called Asekpu, and there lived a princess named Kamsi. Her father was King Luke, and she was his only daughter. Now Kamsi was known for her beauty and cheerful spirit, but she had a significant challenge. She was crippled, and because of this no man wished to marry her. Her life became even more tragic when her father King Luke and her only brother, Prince Jonathan, the sole heir to the throne, suddenly passed away because of a strange sickness that befell them, leaving Princess Kamsi, the king's only daughter, and the queen, Agatha, his wife, alive. Now after the tragedy that befell Kamsi's family, the throne became empty because both the heir and the king had passed away. But it couldn't remain vacant for long as dictated by the village tradition. And because the traditions of the village also dictated that an unmarried woman couldn't ascend the throne, Kamsi, the only surviving child of the king, couldn't ascend the throne, more so as she was a cripple. Because of this, Kamsi's uncle, Malaki, was temporarily crowned as the new king of Asekpu and was tasked to rule the land until Kamsi got married. This was a big problem for Kamsi because she knew she had to marry quickly in order to reclaim the throne from her uncle before his temporary reign would become permanent and her father's legacy would be erased. Time was of essence. But she was crippled, and even while being a princess, no man wanted to take a disabled woman as their bride. As the days went by after her father's death, Kamsi's goal of getting married and taking back the throne seemed less and less possible. It felt like an unachievable goal because despite her crippled state, Kamsi and her mother, Agatha, were the subject of the village gossip and ridicule. So young men avoided Kamsi, and the villagers' whispers followed her wherever she went. The tragic loss of her father and brother had made Kamsi and her mother objects of mockery and suspicion. Some of the villagers gossiped because they had never seen a wheelchair and did not understand how a chair could have wheels. Others believed that the late King Luke and his son were killed by Kamsi's mother, the queen. They also believed that Kamsi was crippled because her mother, the queen, used her legs to perform dark rituals. But Kamsi was determined to find a solution through marriage, hoping it would end the villagers' whispers, exonerate her mother from the wicked accusations, and restore Kamsi as the rightful heir to her father's throne. She was passionate about the village and its affairs, but most of the villagers only cared about her disability. "When I get married, all these will end," Kamsi would say to herself each time the villagers mocked her. Then she will pass them back to the palace. Kamsi's mother, Queen Agatha, withdrew into her shell after the death of the king and his heir, so Kamsi was left alone to deal with loneliness and insults from the villagers. One faithful day, Kamsi decided to go to the market. She had heard from the village gossips that the village merchant acquired new sets of jewelry from the city, and they were beautiful to behold. Kamsi remembered that she used to go to the market with her father to buy customized perfume and jewelry for her mother, Queen Agatha. And every time her mother received these gifts, she swooned and blushed uncontrollably. But since her father's death, no one had gifted her. Kamsi contemplated sending the maid to the market, but she feared the maid would buy something that wouldn't meet the queen's approval since she did not know the queen's preferences. So she decided to visit the market herself. As Kamsi wheeled past the villagers, only a few of the villagers stopped to greet her. She was sad by how the villagers ignored her. And she remembered that when her father was alive, the villagers always stopped to greet him and would genuflect with screams of His Majesty, echoing through the market, after which her father would ask them to go about their business. But now, nobody cared if she was a princess or not. All the respect they used to give her had suddenly vanished. Most of the villagers ignored her, and she saw that some even pointed hands at her and whispered amongst themselves, but she did not care about any of that. At the jewelry store, the merchant greeted Kamsi warmly and offered her the best of his new sets of jewelry. One of the sets caught Kamsi's eyes, so she paid for it, and happily, she left the store. But as she wheeled through the village, she passed a group of maidens. Then she heard one of them shout, "Look at her, princess without legs. You are just an ugly creature who should never have been born." As Kamsi heard these words, she stopped her chair abruptly, and the urge to cry immediately overwhelmed her. She had heard people call her worthless, but nobody had even said that they wished she was never born, and this hurt her even more than she thought it would. The words cut deep, and the comments grew louder and more hurtful. "You witch! Your birth killed your father and brother. If you were not born, they wouldn't have died. You are evil." Kamsi couldn't bear these words and she started to cry. Her father and brother were the only men who had accepted her wholeheartedly despite her condition, and they loved her flawlessly, so why? Why would she kill them? Kamsi did not want to cry in front of the maidens to avoid giving them another topic to gossip about, but their words were too cruel for her to bear. Suddenly, a young man stepped into view and he looked angry. "Enough of this," the man said in an authoritative voice. "How dare you speak like that to someone who has done no wrong to you?" The maidens were surprised yet irritated by the man who had stepped up in favor of Princess Kamsi. One of them replied harshly in a loud voice, "Who do you think you are to tell us what to do?" But the young man was resolute and retorted, "I am someone who believes in decency and respect, and I won't stand by while you belittle someone who is already suffering. Have you no respect for the late king? Have you no conscience?" the man asked in a loud voice. The maidens felt defeated and glared at the young man but said nothing more. They exchanged uncomfortable glances and instead of apologizing to Kamsi, they rolled their eyes at the young man and left. After they left, the man turned to Kamsi and kneeled beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked, but Kamsi said nothing. "I am sorry they treated you that way," the man said. Kamsi, still trembling from the encounter, looked up at him with teary eyes. "Thank you. I didn't expect anyone to stand up for me," Kamsi said as she surveyed the young man who had helped her. She saw that he had a hat on his head. It was a straw hat with a wide brim and high crown. There was a bag slung on his shoulder and he had a machete by his side. She could see the contents of the bag and it contained grains and seeds. So she knew he was a farmer. The man smiled as he saw that Kamsi was surveying him. "Haha, I see that you are wondering who it is that helped you. My name is Izuna," the man said. "I am Kamsi, Princess Kamsi." "I appreciate your kindness," Kamsi replied with a forced smile. "Princess Kamsi. Oh, I know you. You are the crippled princess everyone talks about. If you need time to yourself, I know a place where we can go. It is not far from the market and it is free from the eyes of the villagers. If you want, we can go there," Izuna suggested. Kamsi nodded in consent even though she was skeptical about following the stranger. So Izuna pushed her chair all the way to a vast area of farmland. When they got to the farmland, he wheeled her under a big tree that formed a shade. "This is your farm, isn't it?" Kamsi asked Izuna and he smiled in agreement. "Thank you for bringing me here, Izuna," Kamsi said. Her voice filled with emotion from earlier. Izuna responded, "I'm sorry you had to deal with those maidens. They can be quite thoughtless sometimes. Thank you for stepping in. I was feeling quite overwhelmed." Izuna's expression was thoughtful. "I could tell you were overwhelmed. It's never easy facing such hostility, but you handled it with a lot of grace," he said. Kamsi shook her head and tried to suppress her growing frustration as her mind replayed images of the encounter with the maiden. "It is difficult to stay graceful when people are so unkind. I have no friends and the only people that were unconditionally kind to me I have lost to the hands of death. Now I am struggling with many issues. The gossips, my condition, everything," Kamsi said, but immediately stopped talking as she did not want to portray herself as a weak princess in front of Izuna. However, Izuna looked at her with understanding and suddenly smiled. "Why are you smiling? Are you mocking me? Or did I say something foolish?" Kamsi asked, but Izuna's next words surprised her. "You are beautiful, Princess Kamsi. Your beauty cannot disappear because you are crippled. No, those maidens know it too and they are jealous, that is why they taunt you. I can be your friend. I will never judge your condition," Izuna said with a broad smile. His words stunned Kamsi and she stared breathlessly as she looked at Izuna and no word came out of her lips. Izuna said nothing and only watched her. Then he saw her face gradually break into a smile. The smile got bigger until Kamsi eventually started laughing. She laughed so hard that a tear rolled down her cheek. "Princess Kamsi, is there a problem?" Troubled Izuna asked with embarrassment as he felt that the princess was rejecting his request of becoming friends with her. Kamsi saw the look on his face and her laughter gradually died down. No one has ever told me I am beautiful. Only my father and the crown prince did that. They are the only ones who loved me despite all odds. I am just shocked that a stranger who I just met stepped up and protected me from the harsh words of some maidens. Now he says I'm beautiful and even wants to be friends with me. Meanwhile, every other villager has avoided me like I am some kind of debilitating plague. Yes, I am surprised. As Kamsi said these words, Izana nodded in acknowledgement. Okay, I understand that it is unbelievable considering the kind of life you lived in the past, and that is alright. But you truly are beautiful. Stay here. I wish to plant the grains in the farm. It wouldn't take too long. I already planted some earlier but ran out of grains, which is why I was at the market, Izana said. As he left, Kamsi watched as he dug the soil with his machete and planted grain in it. The sun was scorching, but he had his hat on him. She watched for a while, forgetting that Izana had asked to be her friend. It seemed like Izana had forgotten about her because he planted like no one was watching him. But then he flashed Kamsi a smile, and it made her remember that the young man had asked to be her friend, and this brought smiles to her face. It was the first time she was smiling genuinely since the death of her father and brother. When Izana finished planting, he went to Kamsi under the shade. Have you decided now? Izana asked as he sat down on the grass without care. Then he pulled off the farmer's hat and poured water on his face to cool himself, after which he washed his hands. Kamsi liked how free he was, and it made her smile again. Yes, I want us to be friends, Kamsi responded to his question. Does my new friend care for a little something to eat? Izana asked with a smile. Kamsi was about to ask him what it was that he wanted her to eat, then she saw him carefully open a basket that contained fresh fruits and nuts. So she replied, yes. Thank you. She was skeptical about eating at first. For some reason she feared that the fruits were poisoned, but she grew comfortable after she saw him munch the nuts and fruits. As they ate, they talked until they lost track of time. Izana talked about how much he had heard about her from the villagers. He said he missed King Luke, and he said he was sorry Kamsi lost her father. Kamsi thanked him when he said this. Thank you so much, Izana. You are a kind man, she said. Then they went on with their discussion. Izana's father was late, and his mother was not a native of Asekpu. His father married his mother from the neighboring village, but after his death, she fell sick and was unable to deal with the loss, so she went back to her people to be treated and remained there. But Izana visited her on occasions. This made Kamsi know that he truly understood the pain she was feeling from losing two people she loved, and she was grateful for the time he spent with her. Izana was a funny guy, and his jokes made Kamsi laugh. He was the first man who truly appreciated her real self and did not care about her condition. It had been a long time Kamsi had that much fun, and the more they talked, the more she learned about him and grew a liking for him. Dong dong dong, the village clock rang. The clock had been ringing at intervals, but Kamsi and Izana were too absorbed in their conversation to notice that time was slipping away. It was at that time that Izana noticed that the shadows were now darker and longer, and birds were beginning to sing. That was when they realized that it was evening already, and Kamsi was not within the walls of the palace. Oh no! My mother would be worried, Kamsi cried out. Then you better hurry home. I'll help, Izana said kindly. Then he hurriedly packed the remaining grains inside his basket. Let us meet again tomorrow, Princess Kamsi. Same time, here at the farm. Does this please you? Izana asked as he stood up. Kamsi answered yes without processing the question. She was not herself at that moment as she thought over and over about how worried her mother would be. Then she offered to hold Izana's machete and the basket as he pushed the wheelchair all the way to the palace. Izana left Kamsi in front of the palace gate. Thank you, Kamsi said hastily to Izana as he collected his machete and basket from her hands. Tomorrow we meet again, Izana replied. Then he fled before the palace guards caught wind of him. Kamsi saw a group of guards with lamps approach her. Who goes there? The chief guard called out as he saw a figure in front of him. It is I, Princess Kamsi. Kamsi immediately answered. Princess, we are sorry we did not recognize you. The chief guard apologized with a bow when he saw that the figure was truly Princess Kamsi. You disappeared without the knowledge of anyone. The entire palace has been searching for you and the queen is deeply bothered. These words confirmed Kamsi's fears. When Kamsi entered the palace, she first went to the queen's chambers. There she saw her mother, Queen Agatha, seated on a stool gazing out into the village. Kamsi felt bad as she saw her mother in this state. She was aware her mother was yet to deal with the grief of losing her husband and son, and it made her sad that she was adding to her mother's problems. Queen Agatha was lost in thoughts and did not realize Kamsi's presence. So Kamsi wheeled her chair to her mother's side and gently placed a hand on her mother's arm. "Mother, Mother," she said as she shook her arm to bring her out of her thoughts. "Yes?" Queen Agatha replied as she almost jumped out of her seat in fright. But Kamsi held her strongly, and when Queen Agatha saw that it was her daughter whom she frantically searched for in the last few hours, she sighed in relief and sat down. "I thought I lost you too," Queen Agatha said sadly with her eyes fixed to the ground. "No, Mother, I am okay. I'm sorry I got you worried," Kamsi apologized. "Tell me what happened," Queen Agatha asked Kamsi. Kamsi stammered as she did not know where to start her story from. She also did not want to remember all the pain she felt because of the incident. "The truth, Kamsi. Tell me the truth," Queen Agatha commanded. "I went to the market. All I wanted was to get you jewelry, then return to the palace." "So what happened?" Queen Agatha questioned Kamsi. "Nothing. It's just the usual insults and derogatory statements." "The jewelry is beautiful," Kamsi said with a smile, trying to brush off the conversation. But Queen Agatha was adamant and started to get emotional. "So the usual insults kept you out of the palace till nightfall. Kamsi? You have gotten used to being abused that you now think it's usual." "I am tired, Kamsi. The weight of everything that has happened is crushing me, and I do not know if I can handle the pain any longer." When Kamsi looked at her mother, she saw that her eyes were filled with tears. "Kamsi, do you know how scared I was when I found out you were not in the palace? I alerted your uncle and the guards. I feared that the villagers harmed you. I hear what they say about you and about me. I hear the accusations and it hurts me. They blame me for everything, and they look at you, my beautiful daughter, and all they see is your disability. When your father was alive, they treated us with love and respect. But his death has made them forget the happy moments we shared as a community." It broke Kamsi's heart to see her mother cry, so she squeezed her mother's hand and tried to console her. "They are just cruel words, Mummy. They do not know the truth and they don't understand our pain. Please, don't cry," Kamsi told her mother as she wiped her tears with her hands. "Mummy, I made a friend today and I plan to meet him again tomorrow. He saved me from the cruel words of the maidens and he is the one I spent time with. We talked till I lost track of time." As Queen Agatha heard these words, she suddenly stopped crying and her eyes lit up in surprise. "A man, you say? Tell me, who is this man?" the queen asked. "His name is Izuna. His father is late and his mother lives in the neighboring village. He is a great farmer of the land," Kamsi answered. Farmer. I'm glad you made a friend. You have my permission to see him tomorrow, but don't get me worried by staying out for too long. Go with a guard and be careful with this new friend of yours. You just met him," Queen Agatha told Kamsi. Kamsi's face lit up with joy as she heard this. "Thank you, Mummy. Thank you. I'll go with a guard." "You have no reason to worry, Mummy," she said excitedly. "Now go meet your uncle. He needs to know you are back," the queen said. Later that day, Kamsi went to see her uncle. She saw that her uncle was in a council meeting with the elders of the village, so she stood by the door until the meeting was concluded. As the elders passed her, she greeted them, but only a few acknowledged her greetings. The rest acted like she was invincible. When Kamsi entered the throne room, her uncle, King Malaki, was seated on the throne. The room was dimly lit and the air was heavy with unspoken words. Then she bowed in a graceful arc. "Your Majesty," she said, in a firm and respectful voice. "Princess Kamsi," King Malaki called out. "It's a good thing you decided to return from whatever escapade you ventured in." "Your mother was worried," he said. Kamsi had thought her uncle would ask if she was okay or try to find out what delayed her, but he didn't, and she was not surprised. She already knew her uncle was not a kind man, and he only acted like he cared to ease her mother's worries. "Sorry I came back late, uncle. I was with a friend." I did not know you have friends. I am not trying to make you feel bad, but I did not think someone would actually want to be friends with a cripple," the king said amidst chuckles. "Good luck with your friends. But next time you go on such escapades, do make sure you return early. Leaving the palace gates open endangers my life and compromises my safety," the king said harshly. Kamsi was not new to her uncle's unkindness. She knew he hated her, so she replied, "Okay," to avoid stretching the matter, after which King Malaki dismissed her. As she left the throne room, she felt bitter towards her uncle, but those feelings were quickly replaced by thoughts of Izuna, which made her smile. Then she prayed for the next day to arrive quickly, so she would see Izuna. After Kamsi left the throne room, the king thought about her and he grew curious about the supposed friend Kamsi had. He knew how cruel the villagers were to Kamsi, so he was very much surprised when Kamsi told him she was with a friend. So, King Malaki summoned his most trusted palace guard. "Your Highness," the guard greeted. "I have a discreet task for you. I want you to keep watch on Princess Kamsi and report her movements and activities to me directly. This is a matter of utmost confidentiality and importance. See to it that it is done without drawing attention to yourself," the king instructed. Later the next day, Kamsi went to the farm to see Izuna. She was delighted to meet him, and he smiled broadly when she called him by his name. "Princess Kamsi, I am glad you came around," Izuna replied. "Are we not friends? Why do you address me as princess? Is this your way of setting boundaries?" Kamsi asked. "Boundaries? Of course not. I just thought you liked being addressed that way. I know the late King Luke treated the villagers with love. We are peasants in the eyes of the royal family." No, the royal family is not like that. If I thought of you that way, I wouldn't spend time chatting with you, so do not say that about yourself. In case you've forgotten, it is because of you guys that the whole village has food to eat. Please call me Kamsi the same way I call you by your name," Kamsi answered. Kamsi spent the rest of day gisting and laughing with Izuna. They talked about many things. Izuna told her stories of the things he faced on the farm. He talked about his mother and he talked about her village. When it was nighttime, just before the village clock rang, Kamsi dismissed him, then she went home. Later that night, King Malaki summoned her again. "I guess you had another adventure today, Princess Kamsi. You should limit the way you move around the village. Your presence bothers the villagers and I do not want them to hurt you," the king said. Kamsi laughed inwardly. She did not know why the king was suddenly interested in knowing about her affairs, but she knew he was not worried about her. He just did not want her to go about the village parading her crippled state. "Your Highness, I left the palace with a guard so no one would have harmed me," Kamsi replied. Then King Malaki sent for his trusted guard. "I need a report from today," the king asked. "My king, today Princess Amaka met with a farmer." "Uncle, you have been monitoring me," Kamsi immediately interrupted the guard. "Yes, do I not have the right to be bothered about my niece?" King Malaki replied. "So this friend of yours is a farmer. Is this the caliber of people you make friends with? I hope you do not plan to marry a lowly peasant. No, you cannot do that. My brother will be displeased about that." As Kamsi heard about her father, she got angry. "You know nothing about my father, uncle. You both were never even close and my father would never call his people peasants," Kamsi said with chuckles. "Thank you, uncle, for your concern. But I can handle myself and I have not said I will marry the farmer, so please do not bother yourself with these thoughts," Kamsi said as politely as she could to avoid pissing off her uncle. The last thing she wanted was a restriction in her movements. "Okay, let me believe you," King Malaki said, after which he dismissed the guard. Then Kamsi decided to table the problems of the farmers to the king. "Uncle, the farmers have been struggling with drought. They need help to ensure their crops survive. Did your friend tell you this?" The king said in mock laughter. "No, uncle. I heard their complaints in the market. And yes, my friend also complained too. The farmers mentioned that if we could divert water from the river using simple channels and trenches, it could provide the needed irrigation. It is a method they have used in the past, but it requires coordination and effort." King Malaki waved a dismissive hand at these words. "The farmers will find a way as they always have. I will not divert resources from more important projects for their convenience. I have already made arrangements. We will purchase grain from neighboring villages. There is no need to waste resources on an expensive project," he said. "Uncle, the people need more than just grain. They need sustainable solutions. These farmers have resorted to carrying barrels of water to their farms, but if we invest in the irrigation system now, it will lessen their troubles and benefit the village for years to come." Kamsi insisted, but King Malaki's eyes sparked in annoyance on hearing this. "You speak as if you understand governance, but you are merely a child playing at being a leader. Leave the decisions to those who are capable." When Kamsi heard these words, she took a deep breath as she felt the weight of her uncle's tyranny. "I may be young, but I am not blind to the needs of our people, uncle. I only seek to help. We must work together for the good of the village," Kamsi replied with a steady voice. But this only infuriated King Malaki the more. "You are not the ruler here," he yelled with his face twisted in a scornful expression. "Help? You are a hindrance, Kamsi. Your presence here is a reminder of your father's failed reign. The sooner you accept that, the better." Kamsi took another deep breath, refusing to let King Makaki's words wound her. "I will continue to fight for what is right, uncle. For the people and for this kingdom." As she said this, King Malaki scanned her from head to toe and burst into laughter. "You? Fight for the kingdom? Look at you, Kamsi. What can you do in that chair? You are a burden, nothing more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have more important matters to attend to." The king said harshly, then he waved his hand dismissively and turned his back on Kamsi. These words hurt Kamsi and she felt a lump form in her throat. She bit her lips and struggled to hold back her tears, but when she entered her chambers, she cried uncontrollably and wished her father was alive. The next day, Kamsi took a ride around the village to clear her head. She did not go to Izana because he had told her that he wanted to visit his mother since it had been a long time he last visited her. So she took with her 2 place guards. The villagers gossiped as usual as she wheeled herself through the village, but none of the villagers pointed hands at her because of their fear for the palace guards. As Princess Kamsi watched, she saw a sleek convoy of luxury cars as it made its way through the narrow paths of the village, drawing the attention of villagers who had rarely seen such opulence. The last time a car was seen in the village was during the coronation of late King Luke. His friends from the university had attended his coronation. King Luke was the first man of Asekpu to attend a university, so when Kamsi started using a wheelchair, most of the elders were not surprised to see the chair. After all, they had seen a mini-house with tires. But the children marveled at the sight and followed the convoy as it made its way to the village square, but the elders watched with a mix of suspicion and interest. Kamsi was intrigued by the sight and followed the vehicles. The convoy stopped in front of the village square, and from the most impressive car emerged a tall, well-dressed man. An old man immediately recognized him. "Namdi!" The old man called with surprise as he approached him, and the tall man bent his head as the old man patted his back. His name was Namdi Okeke and he was a billionaire. He was the son of late Mr. Okeke who died in his sleep, and he had so much resemblance with his father. After his father's death, his mother disappeared from the village with him when he was just a little boy, and since then, no one had seen him until now. Kamsi watched with piqued interest as Namdi surveyed the village with a critical eye, his mind already envisioning the transformation he intended to bring. An elder and several others approached him with cautious smiles. "Welcome to Asekpu, Mr. Okeke," the chief said as he extended his hand in greeting. "We are honored by your visit." Namdi shook the elder's hand and his grip was firm and confident. "Thank you, sir. I have decided to come back to my home. Now I am here to discuss a significant project that I believe will benefit our people." As Namdi spoke, the villagers murmured among themselves. Some were excited by the prospect of the new project, while others were wary of the changes such a development might bring. But Namdi kept talking. "I want to build a hospital. The hospital will lessen the deaths of the villagers. It will restore the sight of the blind villagers, and if there are crippled villagers in the village, it will correct their legs." The villagers screamed with joy as they heard this. "Our princess is crippled," one of the villagers shouted, and some of the villagers laughed at this. "Tufiakwa," an old woman spat. One of the guards heard this and nudged Kamsi. "Let us return to the palace, princess," he said with concern, as he did not want the princess to feel bad. Kamsi nodded, and one of the guards wheeled her out of the square. "So there is a cripple in the village. The hospital will correct her legs," Namdi said with a suspicious smile, but the villagers were too excited to notice. The chief nodded. "Let us take you to the palace so you can discuss your plans with our king." Namdi smiled, clearly confident in his ability to win the king over. "Of course, sir," he said. So the elders entered one of the cars and they left for the palace. The villagers continued to discuss excitedly until they dispersed to continue their various businesses. Meanwhile, Kamsi thought over and over again of Namdi as the guard pushed her chair. She was elated at the news of knowing that something could be done about her condition, and she hoped to learn more about the billionaire. She was engrossed in her thoughts that she did not know when she reached the palace gate. Now, Namdi's meeting did not go as he thought it would. The king kicked against the idea, and he did not understand why, because he knew how important it was for a village to have a well-equipped hospital. Instead, the king tried to convince him to renovate the village school and offer scholarships to secondary school leavers so they would be trained to the university level. Because of this, the elders adjourned the meeting after promising him that they would convince the king. As he drove out of the palace gate, his eyes fell upon Kamsi, who had just arrived at the palace. He noticed the wheelchair and the way she moved with quiet determination, and he smiled. "Finally, I have seen a cripple for the ritual," he muttered to himself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on what you learned and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on the next episode. Have a lovely day.